Simply Financial with Christopher Calandra, Certified Financial Planner, is an innovative, comprehensive, informative, and cutting-edge podcast that discusses financial topics ranging from personal finance, economics, politics, and personal growth. Simply Financial will cover intriguing and thought-provoking questions so that the listener can simply increase their financial IQ.
Welcome to the Simply Financial Podcast. This is your host, Christopher Calandra. We are in season number 3, and this is episode number 6. On today's episode, I have a guest, Nick Raithel, who is a fellow podcaster focusing on real estate investors. And I'm looking forward to our discussion today because I like to invest in real estate investing. I think it's a key part of wealth building. And he's in a great position. Not only does he have the podcast, but his business is focused on providing marketing and consulting help to real estate investors in that community. So, Nick, thanks for joining me today.
Chris, thank you very much for having me on the show.
So your podcast is 7 Rules for Real Estate Investing, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Beautiful. And I will say, as we begin to get into this, I've been doing this for I don't know, maybe we've done 80 or so episodes of the Simply Financial Podcast thus far, and I think this is the first time I've had a guest on that has their own podcast. So this is a first for me.
Well, I'm happy to be the first and to share everything we're doing on the show with you and your audience.
Yeah. So to begin with, why did you decide to launch a podcast focused on real estate investing?
A couple of reasons for that. One of the reasons being that in the marketing and consulting work you mentioned that I'm involved in, I'm working with real estate investors and helping them to get their own professionally published book in just 7 hours of their time. So through that experience and the various projects we've worked on with these investors have gotten to meet a variety of different people in different niches within real estate investing as an industry. And the podcast is coming in then as a way to turn valuable conversations that me and the members of my team are having with these people into something that's publicly available and that can hopefully educate people, including your listeners, on real estate investing so they can, if they're interested, potentially get involved in it too.
That's terrific. And having listened to most of your episodes, I don't know about all, I like the format that you've included a lot of different versions of real estate investing. I think a lot of people, when you mention real estate investing, they'll think of, flipping a property, I think in part because of some of the popular flipping TV shows that have happened over the last few years. But they'll think of flipping, they'll think of, buying a house and renting it out. But there's many, many different ways you could do real estate investing. For example, one episode that you had a guest on recently specialized in investing in storage unit real estate. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. We had a guy by the name of Scott Myers, who that's his thing, buying self-storage units and investing and teaching people about that.
And then there was another one that, again, these are areas that I don't have familiarity with, and probably for most people it doesn't come to mind first when you think about real estate investing, but you had another guest on and talked about something related to farmland.
Yeah, Russell Gray of the Real Estate Guys, talking about how he and his partners have become involved in various aspects of farmland as an investment.
All right, very good. So part of the reason why I wanted to have you on, as I said at the top of the show, is that if we assume someone is starting out in real estate investing, and I know many of the people you've come into contact with are professionals where that's their primary source of income and wealth building, but let's just, for purposes of my audience and where I want to take the discussion, let's assume someone is starting to look at the idea of investing in real estate as part of their wealth building. How should they prepare? What should they do early on as they get started?
Well, I like how you put that in context of being part of their wealth building, because as long as you think about it in that sense, then you're probably correct to think about real estate. And what I mean with that is that anyone who does consider real estate should have some context in which they're thinking about it as a means toward an end. With that, the first step then, to answer your question more fully, would be that anyone who is looking at real estate should have their big why and their reason for why they want to do it. Not just that, but also have a clear sense of what their goals are with real estate investing. Are they doing it, for example, as a way to be able to spend more time with their family? Or are they doing it to secure their retirement? It's coming up in maybe a decade, maybe a little bit less than that. So really have that why and that set of goals in mind as the first step.
All right, very good. And how about selecting, and I think it's part of the goal setting, is what type of asset class? Where does that factor in? Should that be earlier on in the process or a little later on in the process?
I think that should be a little bit later on in the process. I think the goals come first. I think in a second place would be the amount of involvement that you personally want to have in real estate investing. Are you looking, for example, to do this on the side, or are you looking to start off perhaps part-time, but then transition to doing it much more full-time? And then as an added component of that, assuming you are doing it full-time or even part-time, how much actual on-the-ground work do you yourself want to be doing? Do you want to be managing the properties? Do you want to be a landlord? Do you want to be walking door to door, for example, collecting rents? Or would you prefer to be much more hands-off, managing it from sort of a 20,000-foot view, so to speak, and looking at the numbers and hiring out teams to do all of that more ground-level work?
I gotcha. So that's kind of like developing a strategy. I know for myself, I am not a handy guy at all. I can't fix anything. And so in thinking about real estate investing I've done over the years, my strategy has always been not just the time element that's part of it, but also what my capabilities and what my strengths are, whereas somebody else might be a great tradesman where they could fix anything, put things together, or somebody else might be creative in terms of design work or in architecture and engineering. But you have to also align what you're doing, it seems to me, with what your strengths and abilities are, as well as how much time you're going to put in. Is that a good way to look at it?
It is, and I think that another aspect that needs to be brought into this discussion is the fact that as you are looking at yourself, also keep in mind that real estate, as many, many of my guests have said, is a team sport. So as you do get into this, you are inevitably going to be having to reach out and bring other people on board and to build a team. And if you look at the people out there who really are the best in real estate investing, and when I say best, I mean the people who certainly you've heard of with the books, but also the people who are doing quite well for themselves, but are not teaching courses, are not publishing books on investing. The people who are sort of the millionaire next door types who happen to have made much of their millions, accumulated much of their millions in real estate investing, those people are also building teams.
So I imagine, Nick, in your view, part of the goal setting and figuring out your time and involvement, and then I added in what your capabilities are, so you develop kind of this strategy, and then that lends itself to certain does that lend itself to certain asset classes? We talked at the beginning about the farmland, the storage. You could flip houses. You could buy income-producing buildings. Your clientele could be renters of, say, studio apartments or one-bedroom apartments, or you could do office buildings where your tenants might be businesses as opposed to individuals. Walk me through a little bit of how you might try and figure out what asset class, what type of real estate you want to get involved in, at least some of the things that you want to consider to make a smart decision.
Sure. Well, I think you certainly hit it just now with talking, for example, about being handy and being good with tools. I'm not saying you were personally, because you've made it pretty clear that it's not your forte. But for people who are, if they are handy with tools and they like working on houses or building things, repairing things, that might lend itself well to doing a fix and flip. So focusing from an asset class perspective on single-family houses, fixing them up. Well, first off, buying them and acquiring them maybe through a tax auction on the courthouse steps or acquiring them through some other means, fixing them up, and then flipping them. That might be their asset. Versus someone who's much more numbers-focused might find themselves gravitating toward multifamily real estate, as an example, so they can crunch the numbers behind the deal. And they might find that higher level emphasis and multifamily's emphasis as well on economies of scale. So you might be only earning $100 from one door being a rental unit, but $100 from one door, but you're having 100 units in a complex. And that might fit much more into their ideal investment asset. And we see that too with people who are coming, for example, from a medical background. A lot of doctors go into multifamily real estate because they're much more numbers focused. A lot of former iBankers, investment bankers, people who have been engineers too, mechanical engineers, going more into multifamily.
No, that makes sense. And so, again, sticking with the theme, Nick, of somebody's looking to start out in real estate investing, and they've done everything that you've said, and they look at, how are they going to fund the purchase? Can you talk a little bit about that as they game plan what they're going to do?
Yeah, that is a very, very important aspect of it. And as far as excuses go, money and time tend to be the two overwhelming things that cause people who might normally be able to get involved and do quite well to psych themselves out and to stay out of the game, unfortunately. With respect to the money aspect of it, the simple fact is that in many, many, many cases, there really isn't an obstacle if you're willing to get creative with real estate investing. And if you're willing to be creative, then you can, in nearly all cases, get involved. And your involvement can be anything from as simple as, with a house, wholesaling deals. So you get a property under contract with a house. You can do it with other asset types too. But with a house, and you don't even put any of your money in there, but you wholesale the deal. You secure a contract. You're really just trading paper. So you wholesale that property to someone else, and you earn a fee on that. And then if you do enough wholesale deals, you accumulate enough cash, you can then, with that cash reserve, begin buying properties and scaling up from there.
Okay, so let me just interrupt, just to catch everyone up who's listening. So a wholesale would be, in Nick's example, I may not have a lot of money, but I'm willing to put sweat equity in. I may go out and find a house that is a good candidate to be flipped. I would get that property under contract, and then I would find someone that does have the resources and ability to carry through on the flip, and then I would sell that contract to them. And in essence, I'm a middleman or a wholesaler, and I never take control of the property. I don't put money in, but I facilitate the deal by creating the contract and then selling the contract to the actual flipper. Did I describe that okay?
You did, and I would think that you'd probably done a couple of them from the way you described it so well.
I actually have never wholesaled the deal, but I'm familiar with it. And I should add, because this is the important point, is that the flipper would pay the wholesaler a finder's fee or some type of compensation for securing the deal, because the flipper didn't have to go out and pound the pavement and find the deal. So they're getting a service from the wholesaler that they pay for in one way, shape, or form. Have you done a wholesale deal?
I have done wholesale deals. Yep.
Okay.
It's definitely one of the ways that I would recommend.
All right. And so traditional fund purchases is, of course, someone could go out and borrow the money either from traditional sources or non-traditional sources. They could take money from, if they have a bank account or investments, they could cash them in to fund the property. There's even a creative way you could do a self-directed IRA. It's not something that I do as